Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first Story Slam. I don't know if there will be more of them related to Doñana Communities United. And I think many of you know about us, but some of you may not. Doñana Communities United is a group that's been around for about 5 years now. I've been working with it for about, well, no, we've been around for 6 or 7, actually. I've been here for about 4. And what we do is bring community members together from all walks of life, literally, and bring people together so that we can begin to understand the needs of our communities, the strengths and gifts that all of us possess, and then work together to make our community an even healthier and more equitable place to live. And we do that through hands-on projects as well as working with policy. So a variety of different ways that we're working together. If you'd like to learn more about the Time Bank, we have some information. I believe I have a few Time Bank half sheets, and you can see me afterwards for those. And we also do work in different neighborhoods. So if you happen to live in the neighborhood near Young Park, raise your hand if you happen to live in that neighborhood. Yes, Alexa, I know. Charlene, I didn't know you lived over there. Awesome, we'll connect with you. Enrique, if you want to see who is raising their hands in the back, raise your hands, please. Enrique is the person to connect with. And we also do work over at Community of Hope. Those folks who work on that project, raise your hands for me. Yay, Kevin is here tonight. And Larry as well.
Yay.
Awesome. And we're doing work over on McClure. Yay, Kay. And then also over by JCP and by Weed and Seed. So, as well as out in the county in Chaparral and other locations. So just wanted to give you a quick update. But let's get on with the stories, which is why you all came. Teague, if you would like to introduce me, I think I'm kicking it off here, as I recall.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm going to introduce to you Carrie Bachman. Before I do, could we all just take a deep breath together? All right, let's just try to be here as much as possible for this. We don't want to miss any, and it'll help feed the performer. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Carrie Bachman.
Meredith and I are really on cloud 9. We are leaving the event center down on Picacho, and we've just had a great evening. It's her 3rd day of work, and there's a light drizzle, which is even more reason to celebrate. And as we get into the car, I decide to take sort of a roundabout way to show her a little bit of this beautiful town I call home, Las Cruces. We go down Alameda, and I talk to her a bit about urban renewal and the devastation that it wreaked on our city. And we continue up Loman for a bit, and then head down Espina towards the university, because Meredith lives down with the Border Servant Corps members at a house there. And so we're heading down, and the rain is picking up a bit. And I point over to the right-hand side, and I say, look at that huge nuclear reactor-looking structure. That's actually immaculate. And Immaculate I have wonderful memories of. I would go there for Mass on Saturday night and listen to the beautiful music, and I'm not really Catholic and I don't believe, wham! Oh my God, what's just happened? I hear Meredith, ah, ah, ah! And I scream as well because something has hit our car. I didn't even see it. There's a huge hole in the windshield. I slam on the brakes, and as quickly as I can, we leap out of the car, cell phones in hand. Meredith, call the police. Meredith is on the phone immediately, and I call Robert. Robert, come now. I'm down almost at Missouri on Espina, and I've hit somebody. I've never hit anything in my life, much less a person. What on earth has happened? By now it's raining cats and dogs, and I'm freezing in my work dress, and I look out and I see nothing in the middle of the road. There's nothing on the side of the road. Where is this person? And I walk around the side of the car, and then my eye is drawn to the top of the vehicle, and laying out like a surfboard on the top of my car is a man. His head at the windshield, his feet on my hatchback. He's dressed in black. He is black. All black except for one very dark red beanie on his head. And I don't know what to do. I feel like running away. That's all I can do and think of. And yet I know I can't do that. And so I walk around the edge of the car, and his head is right at my eye level. And I see the blood on his face. And I reach out my hand and I say, I am so sorry, please, are you okay? And he says, it's my legs. And I reach out and take his hand, and I say, what is your name? And he says, my name is Baron Green. And I say, Baron, it's gonna be okay. I'll be right here. I am so, so sorry. This is all I know to say, because I've been taught my whole life by my parents, that's what you say if you feel bad for somebody. That's what you say if you've done something wrong. And I know both of those things are true. Before I know it, the cops are here. And they take me aside from Meredith because I'm the one who was driving. And they say, you weren't going very fast, were you? And I think, that's a really odd question. And I say, I don't know how fast I was going. It was raining. I couldn't have been going 30, 35. That's the speed limit. And the cop says, oh, you were probably going about 25, right? And I say, I don't know how fast I was going. And then he says, you weren't drinking, were you? I say, no, I wasn't. I was at a work event. And I'm thinking, this doesn't make sense. These aren't the questions they're supposed to be asking me. I just hit somebody who's hurt on the top of my car. So later, Meredith and I huddle in the back of Robert's vehicle. I hardly know her, and we are sitting there wrapped in each other's arms, just sobbing, and I say over and over, Meredith, I am so sorry. I have ruined this year for you. You've just come for a year on the border, and now I have ruined it, and I understand if you need to go home. I thought she would leave. So afterwards, I go home, I call my insurance company, I talk to my mom. The next day I go pick up the things out of the car. I find everything spattered in blood. This is my insurance copy, the blood of the man whom I've hit, who's now in the hospital at Mountain View. I pick things out of the car amidst the shards of glass, and I decide I am going to go see him. So I drive the rental car that I've been able to get, and I drive to the hospital, and when I see him in his bed, stretched out with a cast from hip to toe, I barely recognize him. His face is so swollen, yet he remembers me from the night before. And I say, Baron, can I do anything to help you? Yes, you can call my sister. And I say, I'd be glad to do that. And so the next few days are a blur, because not only do I call his sister, she harangues me and says, how do you know that my brother was hit? And I realize I've gotten in over my head. I never should have called her. The first thing you do is you don't call somebody. And my lawyer friends tell me, no, that's not something you should have done. And I think, I'm a human being. This is what I did. And I told him I'm sorry. And when I tell him again that I'm sorry, that is, in his mind, an admission of guilt. And I think, I'm going to be sued. And this is indeed what the sister wants to do. So we wait, and we have interviews with the insurance company, and finally I get the resolution. And after a few pleasantries at the start that read, Dear Mr. Green, and a few pleasantries, it says, our investigation has determined that based on our insured's statement, that's me, and the findings detailed in the enclosed police report, we have found you, Mr. Green, 100% responsible, and respectfully decline payment for your damages. I'm so relieved. And yet I read the line again, 100% responsible. Is this man 100% responsible for what has happened to him on this rainy night? That's impossible. I bear no blame. I have walked through my life with privilege adhering and accruing over and over to me, not because I deserve it. Oh yes, I work hard, but I was given an education that I never asked for. I was given parents who read at home. I was given a white body. I was given the fact that I'm a woman. If we had exchanged places that night, who would be found responsible? If I were a black man driving that car that night, I would have been found at least somewhat responsible. And I know this for a fact, and yet what do? All I know to do is continue doing what I do, bringing people together, trying to think about how we keep society from digging holes for people they cannot get out of, even when they try and do their best to get out. This is all I know to do, and so I continue. Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Right to it. Just let everyone come in. I'm sitting in my car in the parking lot, looking at this dull gray building in front of me. I think to myself, like, this looks a lot like a prison. It's 2 shades of gray, big building surrounded by a big parking lot, fenced all around with a security office at the front, security guards checking who goes in and who goes out. I'm looking at the building, and I'm scared. I'm nervous. I'm getting this feeling in my stomach, I call the bubble guts. I'm sure you guys have felt. Finally decide to have the courage and walk to the entrance. As I get to the front, before I go in the doors, I stop and look at the building again. And I think to myself, this is my new high school. As I walk through the front doors, I see a front desk. Office looks pretty nice, pretty clean. Good lighting. I get greeted as I walk in. The receptionist seems nice. I hand her my documents and tell her I'm here to enroll. She glances at them, makes sure I have everything, tells me to take a seat. She's gonna turn them into admissions. That should be done in a minute. And that the principal will be out to see me in a while. As I take a seat, I think about, why am I seeing the principal? I'm here to enroll in school. What did I do? I have these thoughts in my head. Could it be that schools talk to each other? Do they know that I've been labeled an at-risk youth because I dropped out of school for a year? Because according to them, I'm a bad kid? Not that I was, but no one bothered to ask me what was going on. They didn't care. They didn't care that I was struggling, having to deal with my dad being incarcerated for more than half of my life, for being born on the wrong side of an imaginary line. They didn't care that I was having troubles at home, dealing with a rebellious sister and a disconnected mother while taking care of my 2 younger sisters. They didn't care that I couldn't play football. The only thing I could do to escape and forget about everything, because I got hurt. I felt like I was drowning. As I'm sitting there getting more upset by the second, a white, tall, slender man comes up to me and introduces himself. I get up, I say my name, I shake his hand. He tells me, "Can you follow me to my office, please?" We go around the front desk into a small hallway where I can see at the end of the hall this giant safe, almost like if we were in a bank. Right before it, door to the right, is his office. I see it, it looks nice. I see the rustic furniture, a nice rug that gives it this nice, homey feeling. I can't help but be nervous still. As I'm sitting down, I can feel the sweat on my forehead. I can feel like I'm kind of shaking, and I noticed that I kind of jumbled my words as I was introducing myself. And he tells me not to worry, because this is the place for me. He assures me that I'm going to succeed here.
You see, what's been happening is Alexa goes to middle school in Crazy Town, Roswell. And there have been girl fights, gangster crushes, breaking curfew, skipping school, experimenting with drugs and alcohol, and even a pregnancy scare. And there was this one day I go to wake her up for school, and I discovered to my surprise that she shaved off her eyebrows. And it was like a punch to the gut. I was horrified. You have no idea, in this instance, what ominous thing it presented to me. So from there on, she starts drawing on her eyebrows, right? Like way up here, in the middle of her forehead. And my family members start offering to pay her to grow her eyebrows back. But Alexa gets kicked out of school. We can't get her into another public school right away because of districting problems. But due to the privilege of my parents having money, we were able to get her into Gateway Christian. And they allowed this troubling kid, to attend school there. This lasts only a couple of weeks, and on to another school. And here's Alexa in her khakis, her Cortez shoes. She's mad dogging the cheerleader types, right, with her eyebrows. And all it takes is a note with one reference to a gang, and she's kicked out yet again. And we find ourselves in the administrative offices of the Roswell Independent School District before the disciplinary board. And my brother Tom, who's a lawyer, is there to advocate. And it's due to this privileged relationship with Tom that I think she's allowed to return to school. So Alexa's back in school. She's 14 now, and she becomes pregnant. My son Ravi, the forgotten one, he says of this baby, "Mom, it's going to ruin our lives." High school officials don't know what to do with my daughter. She doesn't fit the mold. She's not the typical student. And Alexa, with her petite frame, has difficulty carrying this pregnancy, so she gets put on bed rest. And the school sends this neophyte math tutor to the house, right? He's befuddled by this worldly teen and seems equally as puzzled by the story problems he's trying to teach her. But he's consistent, if nothing else, and he rings the doorbell every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But then Alexa flunks math. And here we go to our alternative school. This place is more welcoming, it's more supportive, yet the standards are low. And meanwhile, we endure stares at church on Sundays. And because our sins are so obvious, we sit in the secluded cry room. And we decline to join the communion line with our arms crossed to accept a blessing in lieu of the host, preferring to avoid the condescending ritual. And then my granddaughter Aaliyah is born, and she is magnificent. She's got this head full of crazy black hair. And man, our family can't imagine we were ever whole without her. Ravi especially loves her. But Alexa quickly becomes lost to the label of teen mom, at-risk youth, juvenile delinquent, drug user, runaway, dropout. This privileged kid is no wannabe. She sprouts the Tres Puntos tattoo on her hand, and then East Side on the back of her neck. And now it's R.A.P. Droopy in big letters across her chest, in honor of a beloved friend she's lost to murder. But the humor's lost on her when I tell her that that tattoo's gonna take on a new meaning when she gets older.
Amen. For
me, the humor's gone too. It's gone with the empty bed, the shoplifting arrests, the ankle monitor, the bullet hole in the car, the pipe under the pillow, the call from a detective who said, "Miss Lily, somebody's died this time." See, we've done therapy, visited with probation officers, reformed convicts, priests. There have been classes in substance abuse, teen parenting. None of it worked. And the humor is now gone from my Ravi, the forgotten one, who now at age 12 says, "Mom, when Alexa dies, I'm going to get her name tattooed on my arm." So now I'm sitting in the courtroom pew. My brother Tom's by my side once again. And the guard brings in Alexa. She's wearing an orange jumpsuit and she's got her hands cuffed. Her eyebrows are conspicuously missing because they don't allow makeup in jail. And as the guard hands her off to the bailiff, he says, "I didn't shackle her. She thinks she might be pregnant." And I hear my brother suck in a breath and I see him put his head down. But I don't really feel punches to the gut anymore, you know? The judge, the judge considers releasing her to me, but I've been hearing about tough love, right? So I say no, neither her dad or I will accept her back into our homes. She's safer here than on the street. She'll run away again. She needs help. And as I say this, I fear that Alexa thinks I don't love her and that I don't want her and that I want to throw her away like the school district did. But nothing is further from the truth. This is the hardest thing I've ever done, especially because in a few days is Thanksgiving. But Alexa's public defender, he's quick on the draw, and he suggests foster care because her parents don't want her, he says. So the judge delays making decision, and my brother Tom and I are walking down the courtroom steps, and he says, "Damn, Kay, I'm sorry." And I said, "Well, you know, if they say that God doesn't give you anything more than you can handle." And he said, "But damn, Kay, how much does God think you can take?" See, I've been researching treatment programs, and none of them take the insurance that covers Alexa through her stepmom's insurance. But once again, we're privileged and fortunate that my parents offered to private pay for a placement at Mesilla Valley Hospital. And the judge decides to send her. And now I'm looking at my daughter across the tables in the cafeteria at this mental health facility in Las Cruces. And I hear Aaliyah out in the lobby with my mom, Aaliyah with her crazy dark hair in the image of her mother at that age of 2. And I look at my daughter in the face and I know I can never take her back to Roswell. So I don't. And here we are. The next storyteller is Mairead McCarthy.
I arrive home tired but fulfilled. After a full day spent soaking up the New Hampshire sun at the lake, I know I'll miss the fresh water for a year when I move to New Mexico. My mom's apartment is sort of in a state of chaos. It's very messy. She's moving to a new school district, so all of her stuff is packed. And I leave tomorrow, so all my stuff is everywhere. I've just graduated college, and I've joined this program that's been, for 20 years, matching volunteers with work on the US-Mexico border, either in Las Cruces or in El Paso. And in exchange for a small living stipend, I would be able to live in community, do meaningful work, and learn about social justice issues, everything I imagined I could do after college. And I've been matched with the coolest job ever. I get to coordinate an alternative model of economics. And when I explain this to people, they don't really understand it, so I spend hours explaining it. And I gush to my friends and family and really anyone who will listen. And I'm really ready to start this job. All of my sweaters and snow boots are packed into storage, and my desert wardrobe, which I've waitressed all summer to buy, is packed into suitcases that are stuffed to the brim. The last detail to iron out is who is going to pick me up from the airport. So I call our program coordinator, who I've missed a call from earlier, to see who's going to get me tomorrow morning. And as the phone rings and she picks up, she says, "Mairead, I'm sorry, your position has been terminated." And on the phone, I digest her words silently, but I begin to freak out. Just mine? Yeah, it was a board decision. You shouldn't contact your job. It was just the decision they made. And I'm thinking, what do I do? My stomach churns at the thought of imagining the next 12 months of my life suddenly unscheduled, and churns even harder when I imagine telling my friends and family and anybody who would listen that I failed before I even began. Can I still go? Is there something else I can do? She says, yeah, but we would have to move you to Texas. And because I'm scared of the alternative, I agree. And I do not want to be a Texan. My mom, who's been listening to this conversation, tells me, "Mairead, don't go. We'll find you something else. Don't go." But I do. And I make it through the terminal, and I say goodbye to my mom and my brother and my dog, who we brought to Boston Logan. And I make it to the plane, and as soon as I sit down in the uncomfortable, bulky seat, I start to sob. And I wrap my teddy bear around my face, and I sob for 3 flights, because the uncertainty is just too uncertain. But when I arrive, I start to like it. I move in, and we can see the El Paso star seems so friendly on the mountain. And I start to like the words, "La iglesia es la verdad, Leila," that I can see on the mountain in Juarez from my home. And I like to walk to Matas to get tortillas in the day, and I start to like the people I'm living with, people I'm in community with. My roommates, they start their jobs, and I start a garden, and I clean the house, and I roam the neighborhood, and I roam the campus, and I'm waiting for a job. Anytime somebody from our program approaches us, I say, "Have you found me a placement yet?" But the answer is always the same. It's, "No, we're still looking." And while I'm in this waiting period, I go through series on Netflix. I even pull out a dusty pair of rollerblades and mistakenly try to rollerblade on the steep hills of Sunset Heights. And it's 3 weeks in, and we are to begin our first programming event. It is going to be a spiritual conversation about our journeys, how we're faring, how we're enjoying the area so far, with Pastor Jared, who is a leader in the program. So the fellows from Las Cruces join us in our El Paso house, and I point out my sunflowers that are just sprouting in time for Memorial Day weekend. And we come into the kitchen and we cook a huge feast. We're so excited to be together. This is the first time we've been together, all 9 of us. And we talk about their jobs and our experiences. And I tell them that I feel like a mom, but I'm ready to start my job, though I don't know what it would be like. And we bring our food to our makeshift area, our big wooden table with mismatched chairs. We crowd 9 chairs in for a table that's probably only meant for 5. And among the commotion, Pastor Jared arrives. He's followed by the treasurer and the board president, who are unexpected guests. The table chimes hello, and I pull over the piano bench to make room for them. We all shift and make space. Join us. We've cooked plenty of food. You're just in time. No, that won't be necessary. This will be quick, says Pastor Jared. And I feel the mood change. We put our forks down despite waiting all day to eat. And I fearfully look around the room and connect eyes with my friend Darren. We notice that our director isn't here and wonder if she's okay. It feels really heavy. And the board president steps forward and says, the program is terminated effective immediately. You have 6 days to leave your program housing. I watch the shock settle around my peers. It doesn't really settle for me. I'm waiting for, but you can move to Texas. But they continue, and they say that we can sign this release, releasing the program of liability, and we can in turn receive a $500 check. He hands everybody a personalized letter, and I look at mine. Seriously, again? It feels more official than last time. And Darren asks if we can call our parents. No, we'll be out soon. They tower over us as we're eating at this kitchen table. And I watch everybody sign one by one and hand their letters back, and I am thinking of my mom telling me, don't go. And then I think she is going to be so mad that I signed something without asking her and her lawyer. And when all of the letters are collected, the three leave, and the panic sets in. What do we do now? Seems like the only logical thing to do right now is to spend the rest of our food budget on tequila.
Amen.
So we do that. And we buy the tequila and we head to Whataburger and we sit down and we order milkshakes. And everybody is figuring out what to do. Some people are looking up flights home, but I waitressed all summer just for a $400 ticket to get here, so this $500 will barely cover my loss. Some people are contacting their bosses to see if they can find them funding and housing. But I never had a boss here. My life was kept so small and unconnected. And then I start to think, there are no rules. There's no restrictions on what food we can buy, or where we work, or what programming we have to do. So that means that there's no restriction on me calling my would-be boss. And so I do. Thank you.
I had just moved into a new foster home in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was just released from an orphanage where I'm supposed to be adopted by the Baca family. Well, I ended up going to a new school, but all of a sudden I end up in a room bigger than this room here, locked up 24/7, except for when I go to school. Well, I became a very troubled child because the fact is that I was a defender. I wasn't a fighter, but I was a defender. Boys and girls would play, the boys would play with praying mantis and the girls would play with jacks. The boys used to take away the balls from us when they'd roll away from us. And when we would have a praying mantis in our hands and we would find one of the guys who would explain to us about this creature, we would want to play too. Well, it got to the point where we had to start fighting, and the girls wouldn't fight back. So I got to the point to where, all right, if you're not going to fight, I will. Well, every time I would get mad or get me very angry, I would pop them in the nose instead of popping them anywhere else but the nose, because I knew that would bleed and I knew it would hurt. Well, I hit one boy and I broke his nose. So I got sent to the office. I got expelled. Foster parents were called in. They decided to send me back to my room again, place me on a steel stool on my knees that would leave indentions. They would leave me sitting there, well, not sitting, but kneeling on this thing, day in and day out. Sometimes at night, when the baby would cry, they would call me into the house and have me rock this baby. If it even just whimpered, I had to rock it. I'd go to school the next day and I couldn't stay awake. So whenever I'd get in trouble again, they'd kneel me on this stool again. This stool was more or less kind of going to be a friend, actually. Because I had nobody else to talk to, nobody else to play with. It seemed like nobody even cared. One day, after I had been fighting so many times in school, just to make a story short, I was sent back to that room again. I was wanting to make a kite because this was kite day, and I didn't know how to make it, so I decided I would take the strings off of the bedspread and use that to make the tail and stuff like that. And I said, well, I don't even have sticks to make this thing. Well, there was wood there, so I figured I'd take the twigs and use that. Well, here comes the foster brother to tell me, get up on that stool. Here we go again, back on the stool. Well, when it would come to taking a bath, I was given a little bitty bucket, about this big, to take a bath in. I didn't have a chance to go to bed like everybody else. I had to stay there until she told me to go to bed. It wasn't easy to live like that. But to this day, I have a lot of flashbacks over it. It's not easy to face people when you've had to live in different types of foster homes, where some are so wonderful to you, to somebody who's, might as well say, you were reborn but born in hell. And it's not right. But you know what? I'm a lot better off now than I was before. But I praise God today because I was told I would never have children. And you know, kind of hurts because I do have my daughter here today, who I have not had since birth. And I thank God for her. And I pray that things will work out for her too. Things are not going right for her right now, but she's here. And I thank God. And thank you, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
And we know what this is?
Stopwatch. 8 minutes.
You hear it?
No.
I can't hear it either. It's going. Can you see it?
Yeah. Silver.
How long was that?
26 seconds.
No. Anyone want to guess?
15 seconds.
15 seconds. So my story is about 15 seconds 30 years ago. So I'm getting home, and it's the World Series. Normally I don't care about the World Series unless the Yankees are in it. However, this World Series is live and playing in my city. It's the Oakland A's versus the San Francisco Giants. So I get home right before 5 o'clock, sit down in my studio apartment with my uncomfortable futon couch. Does anybody have a futon couch? Those don't work as a futon or a couch.
No.
The worst things in the world, but I'm in a studio apartment, so I have to have this couch that's both on my bed too. So I sit down, turn on my TV, it's 5 o'clock, and I'm beginning to watch, and 4 minutes later, the TV goes blank. And the TV flies off the shelf, and I get up and I go, uh-oh, there's something's going on. So I start heading toward the door, and the walls are moving, shaking, and I hear bookshelves falling. And I'm saying a silent prayer, please stop, please stop. Seconds feel like minutes. So I get outside, and it's an eerily calm, warm afternoon. It's sort of the summer in October in San Francisco. And I say, this didn't happen. Then I turn around and look at my building, and I see columns are cracked, and the bricks have separated. And I realize this did happen. For some reason, I head to the backyard, and my landlady, my 100-year-old landlady, Mrs. Riley, is up on a ladder, and there are bricks strewn all around her. I rush up to her and said, Mrs. Riley, are you okay? And she looks a little bit phased and a little bit shaken. She says, I'm okay, but I need to check on my neighbor. I said, okay, Mrs. Riley. I look up in the sky, and there's a black cloud of smoke. So I feel like I want to document what's happening. So I run back inside, grab my cameras, and I go in my garage to grab my scooter. I get my scooter, but the garage door will not open. The building's been compromised, and I cannot get the garage open. There is a back door, though. I could squeeze the scooter through. So I get the scooter, and I'm squeezing this 175-pound scooter through the door, through the alley, and into the street. I'm in the street. This is good. Got my camera on me. I'm safe. Whenever I have my camera with me, I'm totally fearless. Nothing can hurt me. That's in my mind. So I'm riding down the street, and all of a sudden, I'm skidding. I'm sliding. And I stop and I go, what's going on? I look down at the ground. There are cracks in the street, and there's black mud oozing from the bottom of the street. I said, this is not good. I got to avoid these spots. So I keep on heading to where the smoke is, and I end up in an area where there's yellow police tape. And I take my camera, take a few shots, and I feel these embers coming down from the sky. The fire is still burning. I also think, you know what, there's gas lines underneath the street and they could explode at any time. So I decide to head back to my apartment. As I do, I see a long line of cars, hundreds of cars lined up to try to get on the Golden Gate Bridge. No one's moving. I just see brake lights. I get back to my apartment, and there's a group of people outside. Someone has a portable radio, and they're relaying the news. A bridge has fallen. A freeway has fallen. And I realize the news is not good. So I head back in my apartment, grab my landline, and I decide to call my mom. My mom's in Hawaii, and she's gonna hear this really bad news and get worried. So I call her answer machine kicks in. I said, Mom, it's Bobby. I'm okay, don't worry. I'll talk to you later. So I hang up. At least I got a message to her. Go back outside, and it's getting dark. And people are leaving, and there's aftershocks. And I'm thinking, I don't want to be in this building tonight. I don't want to be around this building. Fortunately, my car is parked outside, away from the building, so I spend the entire night there. The very next day, people are gathering outside. Hundreds of people just went outside trying to find out if they could go back to their house. And I see these people, and I look at them, and they're still wearing their business suits from the day before. They had spent the whole night outside. And I think to myself, regardless of their social economic status, this was the great equalizer. The Bay Bridge collapsed, part of it collapsed, the freeway pancaked, and several people in their cars got crushed. 63 people died. Hundreds of buildings have suffered irreparable damage. All this in 15 seconds. I'd like to show you some images I took at the time. This is my apartment. A few seconds after.
Where's the futon?
I'm sitting on it probably. This is the hallway. This is the front of my building when I realized that something wasn't right. These are the separated bricks. This is my backyard. minus my landlady. This is the black mud, and it turns out that a lot of the Marina District has been filled in from mud, dredged mud, and it started to come out from under the ground. And the reason why so many buildings got destroyed is because, like Jello, it shake, and all the foundations of all the buildings got affected. But this is what I was sliding into. Next day, now the fire hoses didn't work, and we had one fire truck left in San Francisco because of the budget cuts. And because of that one fireboat was able to pump water, that saved the city. In 1906, the city was devastated by fire.
Ouch.
I had one fire truck left. Fireboat rather, sorry. And they were able to pump water from the bay directly to that area because the marina is right by the bay. I'm not sure I'd rent an apartment in this building. So people were given a certain amount of minutes to get their stuff out of the building, and this one probably they were allowed about 10 minutes to remove everything they could. $30 years ago.
89.
Do the math. 89. Thank you.
I would like to ask for a big hand for all of our storytellers. It's taken a lot of courage for all of us to not just get up here, but to actually think through the stories and to process these real events that have happened to all of us. These are not stories that are figments of our imaginations. These are actually real things that we've all lived through and that have formed us and made us the people we are today. And I know all of you have stories as well. Real stories, real histories, herstories as well that have happened. And what I would like to do is ask our storytellers if you'd like to bring your chairs up on the stage. And Rosa, if you'd like to bring your chair a little closer here, and if people have questions for us, you're welcome to ask questions. And as I say, please indulge us if we don't feel comfortable answering. That's our prerogative. So come on up, everybody. Does anybody have any questions you'd like to ask? I see Peter, and maybe I'll wander.
Yeah, this is directed to each of you. in a sentence or two, how, if at all, has the exercise of focusing on these important stories and telling them to strangers changed you?
All right, who would like to start with that? Everyone has a chance who would like to answer.
Enrique's ready to talk.
Robert, can we start with you and then
Pass this direction?
It made me dig up some slides I haven't looked at in 20 years, which is good. And I'm usually behind the camera and behind the scenes, and this is a whole different thing for me. So I think it's encouraging to know that I could do this both behind the camera and in front of the camera.
For me, I think my story in particular is not like a secret to this community. I was excited to share with, although you might be strangers, you might not be a stranger to my story. So I was excited to share how it personally impacted me.
And it does look like a prison.
Yeah, for me, it was tough, but I guess once I finished, it was just a big relief to be able to talk about that.
For me, it was very healing. I hadn't put it all together and processed all of it until I was able to put the story together and to share it. So I thank you for, letting me share.
For me, some of you are familiar with this event that happened to me, but I think I tend sometimes when difficult things happen to push them back and just feel, okay, I need to move forward and be even stronger in the work that I do. And so it was really hard to process. And with each telling, I've found myself remembering more things and being comfortable sharing more of my vulnerability in that situation. And I think that in itself is a good reminder for where we get our power, to not press stories away, but instead invite them into our lives and learn from them, as hard as that may be.
What it's done for me is that I've become a peer counselor. I've worked with children of all ages, from every walks of life, through all kinds of thick and thin, who've lost their parents to drugs, to drinking, child abuse, murder, different weird things that you don't normally see every day. What happens behind closed doors. Like the song says, nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors. But I do know, and I'm here today to bring that out to those who don't know these things, who've had what they call the golden or the silver spoon all their lives, so they don't see these things. So it's better that someone like myself to bring it out, to show the world, that not everything is as peachy and squeaky clean as people think they are. So I hope and pray that what I have brought to you, that you would understand what goes on behind closed doors.
Well, thank you, because it was really, from someone listening, it was really moving to hear your story. So I really appreciate it. If any, for those of you who wrote your story, who wrote it down first and then read it out loud, I'm just wondering if you can articulate how differently that felt or not, or just if there was any difference in impact between writing it down and then sharing it with everyone orally.
I didn't write anything down. And the reason why is because the fact is, it's all right here.
I had to write it down to process it all. There was so much, and Alexa and I reflected quite a bit through this process, and And I'm just a writer, that's how I tend to process things. So it was very helpful in that manner. And then, now I have it in writing and can sort of make sense of it all.
I originally started by telling my story only, but my story has a lot of context attached to it, so I felt that every time I would tell it, I wouldn't be doing the audience justice. So I ended up writing out my story and then doing a mixture of adding like elements as well as reading.
So I am somebody most people probably know who doesn't like to do the same thing twice. And so this workshop was really challenging for me because the idea was to get your story down. I don't want to get my story down. I want my story to be alive and real and in the moment. And so I really fought that. I would write down ideas. Every time I've told it, it's been completely different. And tonight I told it, it was completely different. So I am not like a real storyteller in the sense of getting things down. I'm just about like trying to be in the moment. And I think hopefully that's okay. I chafe a little bit at the idea that all of us have a story. All of us have multiple stories, and those stories change over time. And I think that's beautiful, and that should be celebrated.
I actually remembered all these images that I shot from 30 years ago. So I have a visual memory that helps me articulate what happened. I can remember things visually from 50 years ago for some reason, so that instead of just writing it down, I have this visual memory that I'm able to call on. But I did sit and write a little bit to help the sequences, and it did help me a little bit to do that.
Mr. Green was living on the streets. He did not have a residence. He's not currently here to my knowledge. I don't exactly know. And to be honest, in some ways, I don't feel it's my role to know. I do know that he did not have life-threatening injuries. And I feel in some ways, sometimes it's easy as a person with a lot of privilege to think that it's my role to make things right or to know about everything that's going on. And I think sometimes we need to step back from that and say, you know what? People have a right to privacy and a right to their lives.
Yeah, all of you were wonderful, very immediate and heartfelt, and reflecting on the earthquake. I grew up in California, so I went through several earthquakes in Los Angeles. And did that earthquake was that a marker in your life, like a transform afterwards? Did your life, you went in a different direction? Because when I was in several earthquakes, it puts you in the moment immediately. It's like a...
Well, there's a saying in the Bible not to build your house on sand, but on rock. So my next move was on living on rock, which was Pacific Heights in a Victorian. So I made sure that I was not living on sand anymore. But as far as the actual feeling of an earthquake, I suppose whenever I feel an earthquake again, it brings me back to that moment. Because this was a rolling earthquake. I've been in several where it's just one quick shock, but this was a rolling, and it lasted, like I said, 15 seconds, which was way longer than any earthquake I'd been before. And I'm sure other people here have lived in the Bay Area during the earthquake. How many people here were in the Bay Area during the earthquake? You were? Okay. So you all have stories, I'm sure, but the moment that earthquake hits again, it brings you back to that one particular one, which seemed to be, for me, the longest one I've ever been in before.
Thank you all so much. It was a rich, really rich, raw experience to listen to. And what came up for me is the amount of courage, not only to experience the things that you all experienced, but then to be willing to go through them and relate them. And I just think it's important to acknowledge yourselves, each one of you, for the courage and the bravery to do this for us. It was really remarkable. Thank you so much.
I think stories are things that we don't always hear, the formative stories, and some of us are more apt to be forthcoming than others. And I think it's really important what you said, Kevin. We think we know each other, and yet there's a lot that forms and shapes us that happened a long time ago or that's on the inside that we may not let out. And that letting out is really challenging and yet really part of moving forward as a community together. And so what I would like to ask folks here is for a sense from you all how we as a community in Las Cruces could perhaps look at stories that have happened to us, lived experiences, and take them and share them and then move forward to create a community that is more honest and more respectful and more loving. Does anybody have any ideas they'd like to share in that regard? T.
More of this.
We heard of the first time.
Is there?
If people wanted to share them in a more public venue, there's a lot of places. I was thinking, wouldn't this be cool under the stars with just a few lights, you know?
That would be nice.
Yes.
And there's just so many, well, anyway, that's it.
Thank you, Teague. I knew you had a bit more to say.
You can do it at the stage at Young Park.
So the idea of maybe holding a monthly circle where people could come and share stories.
I would show up.
Yes, Patricia in the back, I can barely see you here, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, and I say this jokingly, but I also mean it too. I think it would just be fun come autumn. And it doesn't have to be a group this size, it can be smaller, something more intimate, or larger. But I love the idea of sitting around a campfire at night,
Amen.
you know, with the marshmallows, with the chocolate graham crackers, whatever beverage you like to down or whatever, but you know, just tell the stories.
It's a beautiful idea to combine being outside in the beautiful fall weather. And I would say too, like, how can we make sure that the folks who come are people from broad walks of life, and we're sharing stories that are not just from one or a couple of perspectives, but from many, many perspectives. How could we go about making sure that that happens?
The marketing, you would have to talk to people in all different.
So how specifically?
Specifically, you would have to ask people in different areas, different races, different colors, different religions. Make sure that everybody knows that it's not just like somebody that's in the rich section of town or politicians or something. It would have to be uniform. You'd have to tell everybody.
I've given it some thought because originally why I got into this was because I was interested in capturing stories of people who experience developmental disabilities, and they don't have the means a lot of times to deliver a story in your typical way. So this at least has helped me kind of develop sort of a framework, and then I'm interested in talking to some colleagues in the field and other people about how we could help folks translate their stories in some way, or help parents help capture the, you know, I don't know. I don't have it figured out, but I'm interested in that.
I love that, Kay, and thank you for that reminder that stories are not always told in the same way with language, right? There are other ways to tell stories. Unfortunately, one of our tellers tonight is back in Mexico, Mike Salazar, and he wasn't able to join us tonight, but his story would have been partially in Spanish and partially in English, reflecting his life journey, actually. And so that's another thing that I think would be important is how do we engage people in multiple ways of telling stories?
I think there'd have to be consideration for places and spaces where people felt safe to tell stories, and we'd have to think about where people can get to easily. So if you have storytelling in a place that's really difficult for people to get to, they won't come. Because it's also asking a lot of people to tell their story, and I give a lot of credit to Cruces creatives. We could probably find ways find people who do not feel safe here, but I think it's probably one of the better spaces to get people from different walks of life. So that just occurred to me, like you're thinking about like, is it a time that people will feel comfortable being present, and can they get there? And so then maybe a storytelling, maybe it moves around, and people know where the next one is. And then if you can make it go, and if there were enough of them, and you knew that if you really enjoyed it, and you knew that there would be something that you could participate in at some point, maybe that would be one way to reach people.
Nice. Dale, could I have the mic 1 second? I just want to go with what she just said, because I love this location. I happen to teach here, and it's central, and I got here in 5 minutes. And the other location is a
I
hassle.
wanted to say that it would be a lot easier, you know, for a lot of these children and adults who are hearing and visual impaired as I am. I do have mobility problems. That's why I had to sit down. I know it didn't look too good, but that's okay. I hope and pray that you will all understand that, you know, it's hard to get around sometimes by myself, and I'm glad that I have people in the community who have reached out to me and helped me out as much as possible. And I hope and pray that I'll be able to for as long as I live.